Listen to these words from the song, He Knows My Name. I have a maker. He formed my heart. Before even time began, my life was in His hand. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls and hears me when I call. That's the conviction I hope to build or deepen in you as we study what God has to say about creation. I'm very well aware of the fact that this subject is a matter of great scientific and theological argument, and we're not going to shy away from facing some of these issues. But I don't want you to miss the main point of any study of creation. You were personally created by a loving God. As we begin our study of creation, I want you to see that it's not about something that happened a long time ago. It's about what's happening in your heart right now. Hi, I'm Kay Warren, and I want to welcome you to the Foundation Study on Creation. I will be teaching sessions 1 and 3, and Pastor Tom will be teaching sessions 2 and 4. I'm so glad that you have chosen to do this important study in your small group. We study the origins of life because every one of us needs a sense of identity and purpose. Because what you believe about your origin affects your self-worth. It affects your relationships. It affects how you view God. Let's talk about your self-worth. Which of these statements gives you a stronger foundation for self-worth? I am a personal creation of a loving God. Or, I am the result of random chemical reactions in a primordial soup. Well, one reason why we are so fascinated with the question of where life began and where we came from is because the answers to these questions form the foundation of who we are. Let's talk about your relationships. Do you think the questions of creation don't impact our thoughts about everyday life and relationships? Let me give you an example from that TV sitcom that used to be on called Home Improvement. And the husband, Tim, is caught by his wife, Jill, looking at another woman as she walks by them at a table in the restaurant. Jill is very angry and confused, and she goes to ask her wise neighbor, Wilson, who, if you remember, speaks from behind that fence, why Tim would do this. And Wilson explained to Jill that cavemen needed to mate with many women in order to propagate the species, so it's absolutely just natural that men would have these feelings. Well, that's very different from the picture that the Bible gives of the first man and woman. Adam and Eve were given to each other by God to become one with each other for a lifetime. Wives, which would you rather have your husband think? I have an inborn natural desire to mate with many women, and I'm going to have to suppress that desire for the rest of my life. Or, I was created by God to be fulfilled through my faithfulness in unity with one woman for the rest of my life. Let's talk about how you view God. The way we understand the truth about creation deeply impacts our beliefs about God. The farther you feel God is from the act of creation, the farther you're bound to feel from God. It's much easier to develop a personal relationship with God when you realize that He had a personal hand in creating you. This study is somewhat different from other studies that we've done in Foundations because in our other studies, most of the quotes were from the Bible. But in this study, you're going to also see a lot of quotes from scientists who study the subject of creation. Since this very biblical subject is much discussed in our science classrooms and universities and labs, I wanted you to be able to hear from some of these experts as well. But I also admit to you from the beginning that we'll only be able to touch on this subject. If this study can get you thinking so that you'll study more for yourself, it will have been a huge success. In this study, we're going to answer 3 simple questions. I mean, they're simple to ask, like the answers involve who God is, who we are, and why we're here. The 3 questions are, why did God create? Second, how did God create? And then third, when did God create? Well, let's talk about for a few minutes, why did God create? Well, number 1, God created for His own sake. God created because He enjoyed creating. Read with me Psalm 104:31. May the glory of the Lord last forever. The Lord rejoices in all He has made. He didn't have to create. He simply wanted to create. It brought Him joy. Look at Colossians 1:16 and circle the words for Him. All things were created by Him and for Him. See, ultimately, creation is for God and not for you or me. He wants us to enjoy His creation and to enjoy Him, but you have to understand creation is for Him. I'm very aware that from our human perspective, that sounds very selfish, but God is not selfish. God created for the pure joy of creating. Have you ever done that? Have you ever made something not thinking about who was going to see it or how much you could sell it for, but just for the joy of making that thing? It may have been a woodworking project that you built, or a poem that you wrote, or a garden that you planted, or a garment that you sewed, or a song that you wrote. If you've ever felt the joy of just making something, you have a clue of what it means for God to create for His own sake. Well, the second reason is God created to express His sovereignty. Sovereignty, you